Good evening. I'm going to be presenting Chapter 11, which is titled Organizational Culture Change. This chapter begins by discussing Edward Sheen's concepts about how organizational culture can be identified. I liken it to an iceberg. You have artifacts, espoused beliefs and values, and social validation. Now, artifacts are the things that we see first about an organization. It could be their logo. It could be the, for instance, when we walk into a Chick-fil-A, we see that everyone wears the same red shirt and the same khaki pants. Similar to when we walk into a MAC makeup store, everyone wears all black. That's a part of their organizational culture. That's an artifact. That's one of the ways we first are introduced to a company. The second level of that iceberg are the espoused beliefs and values. Now, these are less visible, and as a result, they take longer to identify. Espoused beliefs and values are the core values of a company, their history, things that they have done for a very long time that typically began with the organization's founders. Finally, at the very bottom of the iceberg, you have the cultural values and assumptions, things that you have to figure out by interacting with an organization. They are not things that you would find in an employee manual. They are things that you just discover from interacting with that organization. It's just the way they are. That's how they have always done things, and so that's why things are the way that they are. Now, one of the things that stood out to me in this chapter is the fact that they talk about how you don't change the culture of an organization by attempting to change the organization's culture. Core values, attitude, behaviors, they are all very high on the priority list. But the thing that you address first will be the easiest thing to change, which is the behavior of the people within the organization. So you first begin by determining the cultural changes that you want to make. That could be done by just evaluating the current state of your organization or its outside environment. Then you identify and implement behaviors necessary for that change to occur. Next, you train management to employ these behaviors. And finally, you include these new practices in performance appraisals as a measure of accountability to make sure that the things that are being taught are being implemented and there's some follow through. The article that I found that aligned quite closely with Chapter 11 was by Yamamoto and Paternoster, Aligning the Airport Community to Improve LAX Guest Satisfaction. Every journey begins with a very important first step. Chapter 11 provided us with a case study on British Airlines. Similar to how the article that I found highlighted the changes that happened at Los Angeles World Airports, the management company who manages LAX. Now, in the 1980s, British Airways transitioned from becoming a government-held airline to a publicly held airline, whereas previously their rates for the prices of their flights were determined by the government. Once they transitioned over to the public sector, the rates would be determined by the market. Prior to this change, British Airways was a part of the government. They were government run. The pilots were former Royal Army pilots. They had a very high standard for engineering and maintenance. They were an industry leader in it. As such, many other airlines sought them out so that they could learn how to become better with their own engineers and their own maintenance programs. However, their customer service suffered because of this. And as a result, although they were tip top for how they serviced their airplanes, they had the best pilots, their customers were very unhappy. And this was something that they were fearful of because they knew that once they got out into the public and were had to compete with other airlines, they would most likely suffer because of their customer service. Likewise, Los Angeles World Airports, the management company for LAX, one of the busiest airports in the United States, they were very small and they are notorious for how busy they are and how frustrating it is for customers to navigate through their airport. They have 9 terminals, and each of these 9 terminals conduct themselves as if they are operating autonomously of one another. They do not behave as though they all function within the same airport, which is a problem. It's always congested. There's often a backlog of people who are trying to go through customs. It's very difficult to fly through LAX, and they suffered. Their customer service ratings suffered. So they wanted to change that. And as a result, they established a campaign called LA Exceptional Experiences, and it was centered around becoming more customer friendly, similar to how British Airways in the 1980s launched their Putting People First program, which again was centered around becoming more customer friendly. Now, both of these organizations use a similar method to create change within their organization. Change is a three-legged stool. Now, this is something that uh, the head of human resources at the time of British Airways, this is a phrase that he coined and he often spoke about, and it was the basis of how they determined they were going to approach their change. The desired new culture is the seat of the stool, and each leg represents a step that needs to be taken in order to affect change. First, you train your employees, you evaluate them, and you incentivize them. Training the employees. As previously stated, British Airways implemented their Managing People First program. This was a 5-day residential activity program that focused on teaching the managers of their organization how to effectively communicate with those who are working under them, manage their staff more participatively, and manage the team and not individuals. And essentially, they wanted to stop the bureaucracy of their organization. Like I said before, many of their pilots and their engineers were former Royal Air Force pilots. So there was not a lot of camaraderie or team building amongst them. Things were very much like they were in the military. You communicated from the top down. There was no lateral communication. Things were very regimented, which, like I said before, caused their customer service to suffer. On the other hand, Los Angeles World Airports implemented the Guest Experience Partners Council. Now, this council was about 25 people, is about 25 people, and it contains key leaders from all areas, key stakeholders from every aspect of the airport. So it has the LAWA Executive Board, U.S. Customs agents, the employees of TSA, airlines, employees, concessions companies, and ground transportation. Together, this council holds monthly meetings to share best practices on how to improve their guest experiences. They believe that the Airport Guest Experience Councils fosters an environment of cooperation and accountability that facilitates the implementation of the initiatives that advance the airport's vision and brand. The next step is to evaluate the programming. Now, British Airways, in addition to training their managers, they evaluated their managers. And 50% of the evaluation was based on the results that they got, and the other 50% was based on the performance. Basically, is this manager implementing all of the tools that they gleaned from when they went through the Managing People First program? It occurred annually, and it was something that the British Airways used as a measure of accountability. Similarly, Los Angeles World Airports implemented a few evaluation options as a way to hold their employees accountable. One of which was mystery shopping, where they send an anonymous person through their airport as if they are a traveler, and that person reports back on about their experience from the time they arrive to the airport to the time that they get to their gate. Additionally, there are coaching and consultations for management and guest satisfaction surveys. Finally, incentives are tied to all of the evaluations. British Airways gave their managers performance pay and rewarded their managers according to how they were rated by by those who are working underneath them. Los Angeles World Airports, now their program is fairly new. It has been implemented only as of 2016. So what they hope to do is to provide employee appreciation programs that are designed with the input from the Guest Experience Council. And professionalism and courtesy will be standards for training. They will be things that will be considered when the employees are going through their evaluations. And here are my references. I hope that I was very thorough and I tried to be very thorough and very succinct. And if you have any questions, please email me and I will be happy to respond. Thank you.